I'm Celine. And I think my husband just tried to poison me. It started with a simple cup of tea, a strange smell, a gut feeling I couldn't ignore. So I switched cups with my sister-in-law. Moments later, she was gasping for breath. And my husband? He wasn't surprised. But that was only the beginning. The missing money, the whispered conversations behind my back, the way my career started crumbling overnight, all while Vesper, his sister, smiled like she already knew how this would end. I thought I was imagining things. I thought I was losing my mind. But the truth? It was so much worse. Sunday brunch at Vesper's estate was a ritual I had never been able to avoid. Alaric insisted it was about family, about keeping peace. But to me, it always felt more like a performance. A carefully curated event where Vesper played the gracious host, and everyone else was expected to fall in line. The house, a modern masterpiece of glass and steel, sat like a fortress against the Chicago skyline. Inside, everything was cold, minimalist art, sharp-edged furniture, and an atmosphere that felt more curated than lived in. I had never felt at home here, even before my suspicions began. Alaric had been quiet on the way over, his hands gripping the steering wheel a little too tightly. I didn't ask why. We had stopped having those kinds of conversations months ago. As we sat at the long glass dining table, I forced a smile while Vesper did what she always did: command the room. She was effortlessly poised, her presence demanding attention. The kind of woman who could make an insult sound like a compliment. And lately, every glance she threw my way carried something unspoken, something dangerous. I couldn't explain it. Not yet. Alaric reached across the table, setting a cup of tea in front of me with a small, deliberate movement. "You should try this, Celine," he said, his voice steady. "I made it just for you." I hesitated, my fingers brushing the handle. A faint metallic scent curled into my nose, sharp and wrong. It was subtle, something most people wouldn't notice. But I did. Vesper sipped her coffee, watching me with an expression that was almost amused. My stomach tightened. "Drink," Alaric urged, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Something inside me screamed no. I reached for a napkin, faking a small, clumsy movement as it slipped from my fingers. "Oh," I muttered, reaching for it, my free hand shifting the cups just slightly, just enough. When I straightened, I lifted the tea I had switched. Vesper continued to sip her coffee, her attention flitting from me to Alaric like she was gauging something unseen. I lifted the cup toward my lips, pretending to take a sip. And then Vesper's breath hitched. She set her coffee down, her expression flickering, just for a second, before her hand reached toward her throat. A single heartbeat passed, then another. Her face paled. The cup in her hand slipped, crashing against the table with a sharp, shattering sound. Alaric leapt up, knocking over his chair, but the look on his face wasn't shock. It wasn't concern. It was terror. Vesper gasped, one hand clutching at her throat as she stumbled back, knocking against the pristine white tablecloth. My pulse pounded in my ears. This wasn't an accident. Someone had planned this, and Alaric wasn't surprised. The realization settled like a cold weight in my chest. My husband knew more than he let on. I lay awake long after Alaric's breathing had evened beside me, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Vesper was in the hospital, yet he hadn't mentioned it to me once. No frantic calls to check on her. No whispered conversations about what had gone wrong. It was as if he had simply chosen to erase the entire event from his mind. But I couldn't erase it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the way his face had twisted. Not in shock, not in concern, but in something far worse. He was terrified, but not for Vesper. For himself. By the time the early morning light seeped through the blinds, I had made up my mind. I needed to start looking for answers, and I needed to start at home. Alaric moved through our morning routine as if nothing had happened. He hummed softly while making coffee, scrolled through his phone at the breakfast table, even gave me his usual peck on the cheek before heading to work. It was all so normal, but I wasn't playing along anymore. I poured a cup of coffee, but left it untouched as I reached for my phone. A familiar anxiety crawled up my spine as I opened my banking app, something I rarely did because Alaric handled all our finances. But today, I wasn't looking for reassurance. I was looking for evidence. It didn't take long to find. A large withdrawal. Thousands of dollars. Gone. My breath caught in my throat as I scrolled through the transaction history. The money had been moved to an account I didn't recognize, and worse, the withdrawals hadn't just started recently. They had been happening for months. My hands clenched into fists. I tried to keep my breathing steady as I went through every line, every date, every slow, methodical theft from our savings. I thought about the way Alaric had been working late, the way he had started brushing off questions about money, the way he had stopped mentioning certain cases at work. It all clicked into place. By the time Alaric walked through the door that evening, my patience had evaporated. "Where did the money go?" I asked, my voice sharp and steady. He paused in the doorway, his fingers tightening around the strap of his briefcase. "What money?" I held up my phone, the screen glowing with the evidence. "This money, thousands of dollars, Alaric. Where did it go?" His expression barely flickered, but I caught it. The hesitation, the flicker of nerves. He set his briefcase down with an exaggerated sigh, as if I were overreacting. "It's an investment, Celine. I was going to tell you." My stomach twisted. "An investment in what?" Alaric rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my gaze. "Something personal, a deal I'm working on." "That's not an answer." I waited. He didn't say anything. The silence between us stretched, thick and heavy, until he finally looked at me. His voice was softer this time, almost pleading. "Trust me." But I didn't. Not anymore. Something bigger was happening here. The tea, his reaction to Vesper, the money. It wasn't just one thing. It was everything. It was my entire life, unraveling thread by thread. Alaric exhaled sharply and grabbed his briefcase again. "I have work to do," he muttered, brushing past me toward the office. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the untouched cup of coffee on the table, the scent of roasted beans filling the air. What else had I been blind to? I opened my laptop and took a deep breath. It was time to uncover the truth. The silence of my home felt heavier than usual, pressing in on me like an invisible force. The missing money, the tea, Alaric's hollow reassurances. It was all leading somewhere, but I still didn't know where. My fingers hesitated over the keyboard as I debated my next move. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. Banking records? Correspondence between Alaric and Vesper? A trail of evidence leading me to the thing I already knew deep down. Something was terribly wrong. The sharp ping of my phone startled me. I glanced at the screen. A text message. Unknown number. "They're not done with you. Be careful." My stomach dropped. I swallowed hard, gripping my phone tighter as I stared at the message, my mind racing. Who was they? And how did this person know what was happening? I called the number immediately, pressing the phone to my ear. No answer. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. A chill crawled down my spine. Someone was watching. Someone new. I stood up abruptly, pacing the living room, my pulse hammering. Was it Vesper? Was this another one of her power plays? A way to keep me unsettled? Or was it someone else? Someone who knew more than I did? I took a shaky breath and forced myself to focus. I couldn't afford to lose control now. I had work to do. The next morning, I woke up nauseous. At first, I thought it was stress, the weight of everything finally pressing too hard against me. But as I forced myself out of bed, the dizziness hit. My stomach clenched painfully, and I barely made it to the bathroom before I was on my knees, heaving. The bitter taste of bile coated my mouth as I gripped the sink, my reflection in the mirror pale and drawn. Number not again. The tea. The familiar feeling of my body betraying me. Was it something I ate? Or was it something more sinister? I didn't have time to think. I was supposed to lead a major client presentation today, one that could land my company one of its biggest accounts of the year. I couldn't afford to miss it. I splashed cold water on my face, forced down the nausea, and dressed as quickly as I could. The drive to my office was a blur, every red light feeling like an eternity. By the time I stepped into the lobby, I was still shaky, but at least I was there. Then I saw her, Vesper, standing in the conference room, smiling. The room was already full, executives seated, the presentation already underway. My presentation. I moved forward, my heels clicking against the marble floor, but before I could reach the door, my boss intercepted me. "Celine," he said, shifting uncomfortably. I didn't think you'd make it in today." I narrowed my eyes. "Why?" He hesitated, his gaze flickering toward the conference room. The client preferred a different approach. Vesper stepped in to handle it. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. She set this up. She knew I wouldn't make it in time, knew I'd be sick, knew this was the perfect moment to swoop in and take what was mine. I pushed past him and stepped into the room, just in time to hear Vesper's closing remarks. The executives around the table nodded in approval, some even smiling. The contract was practically signed. Vesper caught my eye, and there it was. That smirk. The look that said, "You can't stop me. You never could." My nails dug into my palms as my vision blurred with rage. I stormed out of the building, my heartbeat deafening in my ears. This wasn't paranoia. This was real. Someone was actively sabotaging my life. I clenched my fists, the words barely a whisper. I won't let them win. That night, I sat down with a single thought in mind. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I had spent too long reacting, too long playing defense. Vesper had made her move, and she had won. She stole my deal, manipulated my boss, and left me looking like a fool. But this wasn't over. I grabbed my laptop and started searching. If there was one thing I knew about Vesper, it was that she left a trail. People like her always did. The only question was how deep it went, and whether Alaric was tangled in it more than I already feared. A gust of wind rattled the windows, making the silence of my house feel even heavier. I glanced at my phone, half expecting another anonymous message, another veiled threat. Nothing. But they wouldn't warn me twice. The next morning, I walked to my car, still lost in thought, until I noticed something that stopped me cold. All 4 of my tires, slashed. My pulse pounded as I stepped closer, my heels crunching against broken rubber. A small folded note was tucked under my windshield wiper. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. "Let it go before you get hurt." The letters were bold, printed, no signature, no trace of emotion, just a warning. I scanned the empty parking lot, my breath shallow. Someone had been here. Someone had been close enough to do this without being seen. This wasn't a game anymore. I shoved the note into my coat pocket and took a cab to work, my mind already racing toward my next move. I needed someone who could help me navigate this, someone who could find the answers I couldn't. I needed a private investigator. By lunchtime, I was sitting across from Nolan Graves, a man who looked like he had seen too much of the world and didn't care for any of it. He had sharp eyes and a voice that carried no unnecessary words. "This isn't just about my husband," I told him. "This is bigger than that." He leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable. "Then you should know. You might not like what you find." I already knew that. I slid the file I had started compiling across the table. Screenshots, bank statements, emails that felt off, but I hadn't been able to prove were manipulated. Start here. I need to know how deep Alaric is in, and I need to know what Vesper is hiding. He nodded, taking the file. "Give me a day." By the time I got home that evening, exhaustion tugged at every part of me. But I couldn't rest. Not yet. 24 hours later, Nolan called. "Meet me at my office," he said. "You'll want to see this in person." I arrived within the hour, my stomach in knots. He didn't waste time with small talk. Instead, he slid a folder across the desk. "Alaric isn't just involved, Nolan said. He's drowning. The papers inside told me everything I needed to know. Debt. A lot of it. Loans I never knew about. Transactions that linked back to companies with ties to Vesper. It wasn't just money disappearing from our accounts. Alaric had been funneling money into something far bigger than I had imagined. And Vesper? She wasn't just watching over him. She was controlling him. My hands tightened around the edges of the folder as my vision blurred with rage. He had lied to me. Over and over again. I walked into our house that night like a woman on a mission. Alaric barely looked up from his drink when I threw the folder onto the table in front of him. How long have you been lying to me? My voice was cold, steady. His fingers hovered over the papers, but he didn't touch them. He didn't need to. He already knew what was inside. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, finally, he exhaled. Celine, Don't, I cut him off. No excuses. No more lies. He ran a hand through his hair, looking more exhausted than I had ever seen him. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. His jaw tightened, and for the first time, I saw it. The cracks, the guilt, the fear. But it didn't matter anymore. I stepped back, my voice unwavering. If you or Vesper come for me again, I promise I'll return the favor. Alaric's face paled. I didn't wait for him to respond. I walked out the door, my hands trembling as I closed it behind me. For the first time, I wasn't afraid. I was furious. The next morning, I called my lawyer. If Alaric wouldn't tell me the truth, I'd find another way to make him talk. Sitting across from Margot Hastings, a woman known for dismantling men like Alaric in court, I felt an unsettling mix of emotions: anger, betrayal, and a quiet, burning resolve. She flipped through the documents Nolan had uncovered, her manicured nails tapping against the desk. When she finally exhaled, the sound was sharp. This is worse than I expected. I already knew that. Margot slid the papers back toward me. You want to go through with this? I reached for the pen without hesitation. I want him out of my life. As the ink dried on the divorce petition, something inside me shifted. A door had closed. There was no turning back. That night, I walked into our house with a stack of legal papers in my hand. Alaric was in the living room, a half-empty whiskey glass beside him, his tie loosened, his face unreadable. When he saw the documents, his expression didn't change. I dropped them onto the coffee table between us. Sign them! He barely glanced at the papers. Instead, his gaze lifted to mine, something dark flickering behind his eyes. You don't understand what you're doing. A bitter laugh slipped from my lips. No, Alaric, I finally do. His jaw clenched. Vesper's not going to let this go. I leaned forward, voice steady. Neither am I. The next day, the war became official. Vesper orchestrated a family meeting, as if this was some domestic dispute instead of the calculated sabotage she had spent months perfecting. I arrived at her penthouse, greeted by a staff of assistants who acted as if this were a casual gathering rather than a battlefield. Alaric was already there, standing beside her. His posture was stiff, his face unreadable. Vesper sipped from a delicate glass of red wine, her smile the picture of amusement. You're making a mistake, Celine. I held her gaze. So are you. Her smirk didn't falter. You think you can just walk away from this? That I'll let you destroy everything I've built? I tilted my head. You think I'm the one destroying things? Alaric cleared his throat, his voice tight. Both of you need to stop. Vesper turned to him, eyes narrowing. Oh, Alaric, don't act like you're some innocent bystander. You made your choices. His composure cracked, frustration flashing across his face. You both act like I have a choice, but neither of you understands what it means to lose everything. I stared at him, the weight of his words sinking in. He was already lost. Vesper stepped closer, lowering her voice just enough to make it feel intimate, threatening. You're fighting a battle you can't win, Celine. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. We'll see about that. As I turned to leave, her voice followed me. You should have listened when you had the chance. I walked out without looking back. Vesper wasn't bluffing. Something bigger was coming. The next morning, I found out just how far Vesper was willing to go to destroy me. I woke up feeling different. Lighter. As if, for the first time in months, I had taken back a sliver of control. Filing for divorce had been a battle cry, a declaration that I wouldn't be manipulated anymore. But that didn't mean I was safe. A part of me expected retaliation. Vesper was too calculated to let my defiance go unanswered. Alaric was too tangled in her web to walk away without a fight. Still, I had no idea what form their next move would take. I found out soon enough. A few hours into my morning, my phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Celine Bennett?" a woman's voice asked, sharp but controlled. I frowned. "Who's asking?" "My name is Claire Renford," she said. "I need to speak with you. It's about Vesper." I stiffened. "I'm listening." "Not over the phone," Claire interrupted. "Meet me at the Riverton Cafe in an hour. You'll want to hear what I have to say." The line went dead. My hands tightened around the phone. Whoever she was, she knew something. And if she was calling me now, it meant Vesper had hurt her too. An hour later, I stepped into the cafe, scanning the tables until I spotted a woman sitting alone near the window. Her dark brown hair was pulled back into a sleek ponytail, her blazer pressed to perfection, but the tension in her posture gave her away. She was waiting for a fight. "Celine," she greeted, motioning for me to sit. I slid into the chair opposite her, folding my hands on the table. "You said you had something to tell me." Claire exhaled slowly, her fingers tapping against her cup. "You're not the first one she's done this to." A chill crept up my spine. She continued, her voice lowering. 5 years ago, I was a senior executive at a top firm. I was good at my job, too good. Vesper saw me as competition. At first, it was small things, a stolen client, a missed promotion. Then it escalated. I swallowed. "What happened?" Claire's jaw tightened. "She framed me for fraud." The words hit like a slap. "She planted fabricated documents under my name," she explained. "I was discredited, blacklisted. My reputation was destroyed overnight. By the time I cleared my name, it was too late. No firm would touch me." I shook my head, my pulse hammering. "And now she's trying to do the same to me." Claire nodded. "She plays the long game. She doesn't just want to win, she wants to ruin you." The weight of her words settled over me, suffocating. I had thought this was about Alaric, about business, about revenge. But Vesper wasn't just a corporate shark, she was a predator. I leaned forward. "Why are you telling me this now?" A humorless smile crossed Claire's lips. "Because you're the first person who's ever fought back." Something inside me clicked into place. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. This was about ending her. I pushed my coffee aside. "We take her down, together." Claire studied me for a moment before nodding. "Agreed." But as I stepped out of the cafe, a cold certainty settled in my chest. If Vesper found out what we were planning, she wouldn't hesitate to escalate. Celine clenched her fists. If Vesper thought she could destroy her, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. I had played defense for too long. Now it was time to go on the offensive. Sitting across from Claire in my apartment, I spread the files across the table. Pages filled with transactions, contracts, and whispers of destruction. Lives that Vesper had dismantled without a second thought. "We have enough," Claire murmured, scanning the documents. "But we need something that ties it all together, something undeniable." I nodded, my fingers tightening around my coffee mug. Vesper was too powerful to take down with speculation. I needed hard, irrefutable proof. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. Nolan Graves. "I've got something for you," he said, voice clipped. "And trust me, you're going to want to see it in person." I met him an hour later in his office. He slid a single folder across the desk. "This," he said, is what Vesper doesn't want anyone to find. My pulse pounded as I flipped it open. The first page alone made my stomach drop. A missing persons case. A man who had vanished years ago. The deeper I read, the clearer it became. He wasn't just anyone. He was someone who had gotten in Vesper's way. Someone who had threatened her power. And now, he was gone. A sick realization settled over me. Vesper didn't just ruin careers. She erased people. I exhaled shakily, my hands gripping the pages. "This is it," I whispered. "This is what will take her down." But before I could act, Vesper made her move. The next morning, the headlines hit like a wrecking ball. Celine Bennett, a dangerous manipulator. Former employees speak out. Is she unstable? Hidden scandals. The dark side of a rising star. Every article was crafted to smear my name. Fake accusations, distorted truths, carefully planted whispers meant to unravel my reputation overnight. My inbox flooded. Clients withdrew contracts. My boss called, his voice uneasy, telling me to stay away from the office until this blows over. I had expected retaliation. But this was war. Claire stormed into my apartment hours later, phone in hand. She just made the biggest mistake of her life. I lifted my gaze. "What do you mean?" "She got sloppy," Claire said, shoving her phone toward me. "Look at this." I read the messages on the screen, leaked emails, conversations between Vesper and a journalist, instructions to fabricate the articles, proof that every word written about me was a lie orchestrated by her. A slow smile formed on my lips. She had tried to destroy me, and now I had everything I needed to destroy her. I spent the next 24 hours carefully crafting my next move. By morning, I sent the files to one journalist I trusted, someone I knew Vesper couldn't buy. And then I waited. It didn't take long. By noon, the internet exploded with a new wave of headlines. Vesper Bennett exposed. A trail of manipulation and ruined lives. Fraud, lies, and power. The woman behind the curtain. Breaking, new evidence links. Vesper Bennett to a missing persons case. The tides had turned, but Vesper wasn't finished. That afternoon, a courier arrived at my door with an envelope. A legal summons. I was being sued for defamation. I let out a breath, staring at the papers in my hands. This was it. The final battle. I straightened my blazer and walked into the courthouse. It was time to end this once and for all. The cameras flashed as I stepped forward. The world was watching now. I adjusted my blazer, forcing my shoulders back, exuding confidence I wasn't sure I felt. The weight of the trial pressed against my chest like a physical force, but I refused to let it show. The courthouse steps were crowded with journalists, microphones shoved toward my face, voices overlapping in a chaotic chorus. "Celine, how do you respond to the claims against you? Did you fabricate evidence against Vesper Bennett? Are you out for revenge?" I didn't stop. I didn't respond. That was what Vesper wanted, for me to react emotionally, to crack under pressure. Not today. Inside, the courtroom was already buzzing. Vesper sat across the aisle, her usual poise intact, her smirk a mask of confidence. But I knew better. She was unraveling. Alaric sat in the gallery, shoulders tense, his face unreadable. He had spent so long pretending to be neutral, avoiding the consequences of his choices. But neutrality was no longer an option. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. All rise. I exhaled slowly as the trial began. Vesper's attorney went first. A man with sharp features and a voice polished from years of discrediting people like me. "Ladies and gentlemen of the court," he began, his tone smooth, rehearsed. "What we have here is a bitter woman, someone who has been outmaneuvered in business and in life, and now seeks to destroy the one person who has always outshone her." He gestured toward Vesper, who lowered her gaze, feigning humility. "Celine Bennett has fabricated accusations in a desperate attempt to bring my client down. But the truth is, Vesper Bennett is a successful, respected businesswoman, and these claims are nothing more than a jealous vendetta. I clenched my jaw. Every word was carefully crafted, designed to make me look unstable, vengeful. Then it was my attorney's turn. Margot Hastings stood, adjusting the cuffs of her jacket before stepping toward the jury. "Let's talk about truth," she began, her voice measured but powerful. "Because today, that's all that matters." She turned to the judge. "Your Honor, we are not here because my client is vengeful. We are here because of a calculated, deliberate effort to destroy her life. We will present evidence, undeniable proof, of financial fraud, sabotage, and manipulation that spans years. What we are about to reveal will show you exactly who Vesper Bennett really is." The tension in the room thickened. Then, Margot called her first witness, Claire Renford. I watched as Claire walked to the stand, her movements controlled, her expression unreadable. But when she faced the courtroom, her voice was unwavering. "For years, I believed I had been careless," she began, "that I had made mistakes, that my career collapsed because of my own failures." She glanced at Vesper, her eyes narrowing. "But I was wrong. I wasn't careless. I wasn't reckless. I was targeted." She detailed everything. How Vesper manipulated key players in the industry to isolate her, how fabricated evidence destroyed her career, how she was blacklisted. The jury leaned in, absorbing every word. Then Margot handed Claire a file. "Can you confirm the contents of this document?" Claire nodded, her fingers tightening around the pages. "These are emails, bank statements, communications between Vesper Bennett and my former employers, detailing a systematic effort to sabotage my career." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Vesper's smirk finally wavered. Then came the final blow. Margot approached the judge's bench and handed over a sealed envelope. "Your Honor, we have one last piece of evidence." The judge opened it, scanning the contents before his expression hardened. Margot turned to the courtroom. "These are messages between Vesper Bennett and Alaric Bennett, discussing the targeted sabotage of my client's career. In these messages, we see not only intent to discredit her, but discussions about how to ensure she was out of the way, physically." Gasps erupted. Alaric stiffened. Every eye in the room turned to him. Vesper's nails dug into the table, her mask cracking. "This is ridiculous," she hissed under her breath. But it was too late. The judge's gavel struck. "Order in the court!" And just like that, the tide shifted. The jury deliberated for only an hour. When they returned, the verdict was swift. Guilty. On multiple counts of fraud, defamation, and conspiracy. Vesper didn't flinch as the sentence was read. But when the bailiffs approached, her composure broke. As they placed cuffs around her wrists, she turned toward me, her voice a venomous whisper. "You'll regret this." I met her gaze, my own voice steady. "No, Vesper, I won't." She was led away. And just like that, her empire crumbled. The weight on my chest lifted as I stepped outside, the sunlight warm against my skin. For the first time in years, I was free. But what came next? The battle was won, but healing would take time. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to start again. The television flickered in the corner of my apartment, the news anchor's voice droning over footage of Vesper being escorted from the courthouse. Vesper Bennett, once a titan of the corporate world, now faces multiple charges of fraud, conspiracy, and defamation. Sources say her legal team is scrambling for leniency, but experts predict a severe sentencing. I turned away from the screen, barely listening. I didn't need the world to tell me that Vesper had lost. I had seen it in her eyes when they took her away, the moment she realized she was no longer untouchable. Alaric had disappeared from the public eye. His law firm had distanced itself from him, his reputation irreparably tarnished. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt tired. I had spent months fighting, clawing my way out of a war I never asked for. And now that it was over, I didn't know what to do with myself. The knock at my door came late that evening. I opened it without thinking, and there he was. Alaric. His once pristine suits were gone, replaced by something wrinkled and disheveled. He looked like a man who had been unraveling for weeks. "I didn't know how deep I was in until it was too late," he said, his voice hoarse. I didn't step aside to let him in. "You knew enough," I replied. He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his unkempt hair. "I thought I could fix it. That if I kept Vesper happy, kept her in control, I could find a way out." He swallowed hard. I was wrong. I wanted to feel something for him, pity, sadness, nostalgia for the man I once thought I knew. But there was nothing left. "I don't hate you, Alaric," I said, "but I don't forgive you either." His shoulders sagged, like he had been holding on to some desperate hope that I would absolve him. He had made his choices, and I had made mine. I closed the door. The next morning, I met Margot at her office to sign the final divorce papers. As the ink dried, I felt something shift inside me. A weight lifting, a door finally, permanently closed. It was over. Later that afternoon, I met Claire at a small cafe by the river. We sat outside, the autumn breeze curling around us, warm coffee cups in hand. "We finally won, didn't we?" she asked, stirring her drink absent-mindedly. I thought about it for a moment. "It doesn't feel like winning," I admitted. She nodded. "Because it's not about them, it's about us. We survived." That, at least, was something. Before we left, Claire reached into her bag and pulled out a crisp white envelope. "A recruiter sent this to me," she said, sliding it across the table. "I think it was meant for you." I frowned, picking it up. Inside was a letter from Harrison & Cole, one of the most prestigious marketing firms in the country. "Celine Bennett, we would like to extend an offer to lead our next major campaign. Your reputation for resilience, innovation, and strategic leadership speaks for itself. We hope to discuss this opportunity further." I read it twice, then a third time. "Looks like you have a future to get back to," Claire said with a small smile. I took a deep breath. Maybe this was the fresh start I needed. That night, I walked through the city, the glow of streetlights reflecting off the pavement. For the first time in years, I felt free. I wasn't running anymore. I whispered to myself, "I'm not looking back." Then I stepped forward, ready for whatever came next. Because this time, I was in control of my own story. As I step forward into this new chapter of my life, I can't help but look back at everything that has led me here. The betrayals, the battles, the heartbreak, it all forced me to become someone stronger than I ever thought I could be. And if there's one lesson I've learned, it's this: your power is yours alone. Never let anyone take it from you. For too long, I let others define my worth. I trusted people who didn't deserve it, gave second chances to those who had already burned me. But here's the truth. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Vesper's game wasn't just about winning, it was about control. And Alaric? He made the mistake of thinking that standing still was the same as standing strong. In the end, both of them fell, not because I sought revenge, but because the truth has a way of catching up with those who try to bury it. Maybe you've faced your own Vesper. Maybe you've had someone try to take everything from you. Your career, your confidence, your voice. Maybe you're still in that fight. If you are, let this be your reminder. You don't have to stay silent. You don't have to play small. You are stronger than they think. But what about you? Have you ever had to walk away from a toxic situation? Have you ever been underestimated, only to prove everyone wrong? I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment below. Press 1 if this video resonated with you, or tell me where you're watching from. And if you didn't enjoy this, tell me why. I'm always open to learning from your perspective. And hey, if you want to hear more stories like this, real stories of resilience, justice, and redemption, make sure to subscribe to the channel. There's always another story to tell, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. See you in the next one.